you had suggested that I do labs for the high histamine. Is there,
Hmm.
I know I had asked you in the past about a supplement for controlling high histamine. Do you know, I don't remember, is there one? Is there a supplement that could uh, control high histamine? I know
Well, there's
the
more.
diet is very strict. It's very,
Yeah,
very strict.
yeah, good question. So the question was, are there supplements to help with high histamine or help control high histamine? And there's multiple options. What is the correct answer depends on the person and the situation and what's going on. So, for example, um, one that is very useful is called quercetin. And so quercetin is a plant. It's a flavonoid from onion skins and apple skins, and it is what's called well, I mean, it has antihistamine components, and it's a mast cell stabilizer. That's how it has its antihistamine effect. So mast cells are the cells that in our immune system, we have mast cells, and mast cells, when they bond with an IgE antibody that is holding some sort of antigen, like pollen, say, or uh, a histamine food or something. When that docks on the mast cell, that can cause the mast cell to degranulate, and it releases histamine. So the histamine comes from the mast cell. Okay, and so you can have a histamine response from some congestion to hives to rash all the way to EpiPen. Well, in conventional medicine, the drug they would use is called a mast cell stabilizer. So I'll just call it MCS. Okay, mast cell stabilizer. And their top drug for that is called cromolyn. Let me type it faster. So mast cell stabilizer, and it's called cromolyn. And cromolyn is their best mast cell stabilizer. However, it's pretty poor at doing its job. And in head-to-head studies, quercetin beats cromolyn every time. So quercetin, the natural thing from onions and apple skins, is better at stabilizing the mast cells, which when you stabilize the mast cell, that will yield less histamine release. Quercetin's better at that. So you can use quercetin, 500 milligrams once or twice a day is safe to do. You'd want to work with your doctor that knows your case, and if you want to go higher than that. But that was a dose commonly used in COVID as well, because quercetin is also a zinc ionophore, which helps zinc get into the cells better. And in COVID, zinc in the cells and its impact on antiviral defenses and immune function was very important. So a zinc ionophore, that's how I'm blanking on the medication that was illegal. They called it horse
Right,
deworm.
right, right.
But that medication is also a zinc ionophore. That's how it helped. Well, quercetin does that too. So that's why quercetin was used a lot during that time. Um, since before that happened, though, quercetin was known to be a mast cell stabilizer. So that's something you can use. Another one that's good for histamine is butterbur. You can use butterbur. You can use stinging nettle. So these are plant slash herbal uh, things you can use. Enzymes you can use. Of course, we've covered multiple times in other videos. We have an enzyme called diamine oxidase in our body, also known as DAO. DAO is what metabolizes histamine in our body. So there's another one too. I'll come back to this. So there's another one that, again, I've covered in previous videos and we can link to here, and you can search it on the channel. But there's another one called HNMT. That's another enzyme that helps metabolize histamine, and also aldehyde dehydrogenase is another enzyme that does that, ALDH. So metabolize. So these three things are enzymes. So ACE, anywhere you see ACE, that means it's an enzyme. And this has transferase and aldehyde dehydrogenase. So they end in ASE, which is an enzyme. Well, all enzymes are proteins that do work, and they all require nutrients to do their job. So in previous videos, I've talked about, hey, aldehyde dehydrogenase requires multiple things, B2, B3, iron, and molybdenum to do its job. So if you are deficient in B2, B3, iron, and molybdenum, your aldehyde dehydrogenase may not work well. And so now you're not breaking down histamine well. And so you could take an antihistamine supplement like quercetin to help with exposure to exogenous histamine, but the endogenous histamine, or the histamine that you're taking in through, say, your diet, and you need to break down, if your DAO is not good or one of these other two aren't good, is going to stick around longer and can still drive histamine response, even though you're not like being exposed from the outside. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you can take diamine oxidase. There's a supplement for that. You can take the supplemental form to give you more of that enzyme, and that can be helpful while you're working to, figure out what are your exposures and remove your exposures. So you can do diamine oxidase and quercetin. If you test and you have low B2, 3, iron, molybdenum, or other cofactors, you can work to improve those cofactors. Um, this H&MT, MT is methyltransferase, so methylation and methyl forms of B vitamins can be crucial there. So and then of course, like you mentioned earlier, diet, and you said your diet is strict and you're not taking in dietary histamine. So that's one thing you have taken care of there. And so,
The thing is,
um,
I'm not following. I mean, I was away for 3 weeks and I killed it. But when I do follow it, it's very strict, very difficult.
what the diet?
Yeah, the diet is very
Yeah,
difficult to follow.
yeah, there's a lot of potential food. So one thing you could do to help make it a little easier is if you can get an idea of which of those foods impact you the most, and kind of have a ranking, and you avoid the ones that bother you the most, because we're not going to be no histamine.
Right.
So the question is, well, can we lower histamine enough to function and improve, right? And so instead of strictly avoiding all histamine foods as much as you can, which leaves you with not a whole lot, can you reduce the overall load enough to help? And it
Mhm.
and so that would be, if we have a funnel here. Okay, so here's the bottom of the funnel, here's the top. And the funnel is how much histamine you can metabolize. Okay, so you have histamine coming in through diet and environment, and you have histamine leaving through degradation from your enzymes. So down here is where DAO and the others are going to be sitting. And as histamine comes in the top and say piles up here in the funnel, then we have our HNMP and our DAO and our aldehyde dehydrogenase working to help metabolize this and empty your funnel. So one thing the low diet does, or the reduced, you know, intake diet does, is it slows what's coming in, at least nutritionally from here. We also have our potential environmental contributions and bugs and infections that can drive it. And so if we lower what's going in, that buys time for our enzymes to flush and get rid of what's already in there. And so if you're still low histamine from up here and you're still having a ton of symptoms, then it may be that your metabolism is too slow of it, because you might have inefficient enzymes. And so you want to support the enzymes with the cofactors that they need, and or you may need to take the enzyme itself to give yourself extra help there.
Mm.
And then
Okay.
another thing to consider, which again we've made videos on in the past, is infections, specifically gut infections, can raise histamine, And we covered a paper where they gave mice that had no mental health issues, they gave them gut infections, and the gut infections drove histamine production in the gut and also in the brain. And the high histamine in the brain
Mm,
caused a deficiency in serotonin and led to depression. And
mm,
so when they killed the bugs, the depression went away.
mm,
So again, it was causal. There was no depression until they gave them the infection. They removed the infection, the depression goes away. Um, when they gave them antidepressants, it didn't help. So it was
mhm,
like, hey, just eliminate the infection. So, support yourself with low histamine as reasonable from a nutrition
mhm,
standpoint. You could support with quercetin and DAO if enzymes are a problem, and then clean up gut, and that potentially could make significant improvements for a person.
mhm. Okay. Yeah, so I have to do the labs.
I mean, you could do it. You could try things empirically. I mean, you could get quercetin and just try it, or DAO and just try it, but then it's kind of, whack-a-mole. Um, so it just depends on where a person's at, what info do you have,
Yeah,
what finances do you have, all those things.
right, right.